Thank you, everybody, for turning up for our second meetup of 2021. Columb Duffy from Allstate has kindly agreed to share some of his wisdom, views, and experience about the challenging topic of measuring innovation. And I know Eoin's going to take a few minutes as well to look at the ISO standards perspective on innovation management. Very briefly, he keeps reminding me. So Columb is going to speak through. If there's any burning questions, do put a hand up, and we'll bring you in to ask the question as and when we can. Otherwise, leave it to the end, and we'll get a good discussion going on at the end. I've known Columb for many years, with, I suppose, two of a very small group of people that has worked across the IT, the cybersecurity, the startup, and the innovation sectors in Northern Ireland. So there's not many of us, so we kind of bump into each other now and again. And I always enjoy hearing his perspective on things. So Columb, I'll hand over to you, and I guess let you introduce yourself properly, and I shall give you the ability to share if you want.
Okay. Thanks very much, Charlie, for that introduction. Wisdom, views, and experiences. It'll be more the views and the experiences. The wisdom is kind of what you'll take from whatever I say. The step in the context here, we all go through our journeys, we all try what we do. I'm not saying I know the answers. All I'm trying to communicate here is what we've seen, and hopefully some of this will be useful to you and be meaningful in whatever journey you're pursuing. Okay, so can you see my screen?
Yep, that's great, thank you.
Whoa, that's good. Right. So innovation measurement, why do we measure? Because we want to figure out how innovative is your organization. And that's a question which we've struggled with a little bit, to be honest. If it was easy, everyone would do it. So firstly, we've got to ask ourselves, what is innovation, or how innovative are we? And just put this in context, this is something which over the last, say, 6 years, I've been looking at the research and development and technology innovation within Allstate, locally within Northern Ireland, running the team, but having a global delivery responsibility, and liaising with different innovation groups across what is a hugely complex and very sizable organization. It is not trivial. Firstly, some people have different ideas about what innovation is. Everyone thinks it's Airbnb or Uber, or Arty and Avail, which are two Allstate companies. Many other people don't realize that there's the spectrum of innovation. So I want to set the context here first and say that incremental innovation is just doing something better than we today than we did yesterday. Radical, we understand that's that big disruptive version of innovation, and then there's this middle ground which is differentiated, where we can do things differently, kind of just constantly sharpening our edge in the competitive market, differentiating ourselves from the competitors. And the chart on the right kind of shows where the energy goes, or where the activity goes, and for the most part, and this kind of holds true within Allstate and a global organization of at least 45,000+ people, most of our energies and activities go into that incremental innovation. So when we're asking ourselves, how innovative are we? This helps us understand what we include and what we exclude. Because the simple principle we believe is, if you can't be innovative in the small things, there's not much chance of being innovative in the big things. Innovation alone is not about creativity. You can have an awful idea and execute it really well and lose a whole lot of money. Or you can have a brilliant idea and execute it really poorly, and so what? Multiplication value is the creativity multiplied by execution. So again, when we're asking how innovative are we, we're looking for that aspect as well. It's not just how good an idea it was, it's how far did it get? How far did it not go? Because crap ideas shouldn't go too far. They should be stopped as soon as possible. So when we started looking at innovation, we had the usual things. What's the cost versus return on investment? How many hours and dollars or pounds are we spending per team, per department? what's the new product sales revenue versus the innovation cost? They're really difficult to assess. When we have within Allstate, I'll just talk about Allstate because I don't know many other organizations. We sell insurance products or products which protect you against life's uncertainties, the perils that you're exposed to. How do we know that such and such an effort by a team in Charlotte or ASPL in India or in Northern Ireland actually contributed to additional sales revenue? That's a really complex question to answer. It's almost impossible to separate the different contributing factors and say this one did 5%, this one did 15% in terms of the overall improvement in sales revenue. What we find is it's impossible. It takes huge effort. We tried it on a small scale. It was really, really hard. Yeah, not impossible, really, really hard. It wasn't worth the effort, basically. So we moved away from sales revenue, and that works fine if it's new products. That's easy. If it's a brand new company like Arity, brand new company like Avail, great, because everything is innovation. But once you have a mature product set like our home auto insurance products, it's really hard. So what's the cost versus return on investment? Again, same sort of thing. Don't really know very easily. We can measure how many hours we've spent on innovation type activities on the department team. We can measure things like what was the cost savings on processes. If an incremental innovation initiative meant that we saved 5 hours per developer every time they did a release, we can measure that. And we can measure how much it cost to come up with that change in process. Those are easy. But the big ones, and the ones we think are most important, are how much can we improve sales revenue, profit margin? Because all of the other innovations we assess, that we invest energy in, unless they drive or contribute towards increased revenue, improvement in customer loyalty index or expense ratios, so what? Okay. The last one I haven't talked about here is employee engagement satisfaction. How innovative is your company is important in that respect, because we're always looking for talent. We're competing for the same talent, right? The talent we're looking to get, the bright idea people, the energetic, engaged people are often going to be asking, am I thinking about joining a stale, stagnant environment, or is there something really happening in this organization? So measuring the employee engagement and satisfaction is an important part of how innovative is the company, for us at least. So then we started asking, are we in fact measuring the right things? Are the right ideas being generated? How do we know they're the right ideas? At what point do we kill off the zombie ideas which can just haunt you forever? The headless zombies, which everyone has in their IT systems, right? These headless systems that they've been around for years and years, and everyone knows it kind of should be shut down, but they don't. So, the same sort of things exist in ideas and innovation. They last forever unless they are assessed systematically and reviewed and either killed, put to one side, or progressed. So are we wasting effort chasing ideas that are bound to fail? Are we chasing the ideas which we should be chasing? Are ideas in fact being generated? That's another obvious one to measure. If we're not generating ideas and considering them, then we're not being innovative. Well, at least not openly. Sometimes innovation happens, I found, in our organization, and people didn't even know that it was called innovation. They said, well, no, I just made this change. And I go, well, talk about the change. It's not just maintaining something. It's not just dusting it off or keeping it up to date with, say, for example, a software application being kept up to date with latest version of a library. That's just maintenance. Many of the people we've talked to found that they were being innovative and didn't even know it. So if you're measuring innovation and people aren't even aware that they're being innovative, you're not going to get the right measurement. So does everyone understand that everyone can innovate? Ideas are great. They're like seedlings, they're so precious and so powerful given a chance, but they're so easily destroyed. So how do we avoid the culture of blame when somebody comes up with ideas and everyone goes, that's a stupid idea, don't be doing that, that's no good, that's never going to get anywhere? Well, if you do that, that person's not going to come up with too many ideas again. So how do we know that we're getting these ideas generated, that we're rewarding people for generating ideas, that we are celebrating the success of an idea, not just the success of the result? How do we avoid this blame culture? And can we get out of our own way? Can we avoid getting caught up in red tape and, oh, not invented here syndrome, and that'll never work, or, oh, there's too much effort involved in that? So these are all the thoughts and wisdoms that I've gathered over the journey, because I've seen innovation teams, and they're just tripping over themselves because they're trying to change what they do without changing how they do it. They're trying to live into the old model but breathe the new world air, and it's difficult, almost impossible in some cases. And if we can't get out of our own way on the small innovations, there's less chance we're actually going to be able to do the big innovations, the disruptive innovations as well. So the journey I'm trying to describe here is that we started off doing the simplistic, kind of naive measurements on innovation, number of ideas, activity, hours spent. And then I think about, well, is that the right thing to be measuring? Are we asking the right questions? Should we not be preparing the ground for innovation more? And this is maybe specific to Allstate, a large organization, multiple shores, many, many teams that don't even know what other teams do. That's not a criticism of Allstate. It's probably similar in many other companies. It's just a symptom of the size. Techniques, tools, processes, duplication of efforts, those are things I'm thinking, well, maybe we should prepare the ground for them in that. So then I started thinking about when we're trying to be innovative, if I'm looking at kind of indicators, KPIs, not metrics as such, but KPIs, there's kind of two categories. There's those which are telling me, yeah, we are set up to be innovative. And there's those which tell me we have seen evidence of innovation and the results. So I asked myself some questions in terms of teams. Are they enabled to innovate? Like, first, do they understand what it is? That it's not this big disruptive innovation, radical innovation all the time. It's very often mostly continuous improvement. Do they have the tools? Do they understand the concepts of like a lean hypothesis? If we build this solution for these people, we will see them behave in this way. We will measure it with these KPIs, and the outcome we expect to observe would be. That's a really simple and powerful tool to help identify what ideas are worth pursuing and what are not. Do they understand how to use it? Do they understand assumption mapping? Do they understand creativity matrices? Do they understand prioritization? Do they understand what's feasible versus non-feasible? Do they map these against each other? The answer is not always. So as a result, we're preparing the ground to answer this leading indicator. Are the teams enabled to innovate? Yes or no, or to what degree? So we're launching a program of work to help ensure that they are. And it's patchy results. Some parts are very capable, some others are not. So we're talking about at Allstate, flooding the organization with innovation tools and methods and understanding so that the rising tide lifts all boats. Part of that is around this idea concept. There are some silly ideas, but if you crush them, you might not get that brilliant idea that was sparked off by that silly idea being thought about for more than just a microsecond. And when ideas do fail, how do you respond? I think it depends very much how far they got. If they got way much further than they should have got, and they cost an awful lot more, then you need to check your processes for progressing those ideas. Failing early is what we're trying to do. We're trying to ensure that failures are supported and that we catch them as early as possible and celebrate those successes of failure, because not allowing them to go too far is a success in my view. And I'm happy to support the failures, but I will not tolerate incompetence. That's an aspect of the organization I'm looking to develop. Are we an organization that tolerates incompetence? No. Yes or no? We need to figure that out. I think we're not. Most of us aren't, but sometimes we are when we don't think we are. So understanding where ideas get to in that developmental pipeline, having the tools in place to help weed out the less valuable ones, and encourage and support the maturing of the more valuable ones as they go along. Though that's the indicator I'm looking for. Have we got that set up? And then simply, have we got innovation happening consistently across the organization? Right now, no, we don't, to be totally transparent. I would love to be able to say yes. You wouldn't believe me if I did say yes, perhaps. But we've got some organizations that are really mature, well established, and they're moving into the optimized maturity phase of innovation activity in their area. And others don't even know they're doing it. So making sure that we have that level playing field, have that measure of activity across the teams, support them and enable them will help me address this leading indicator. And then employee feedback is an important one as well. Do they recognize it? Are they supported? Are they encouraged? Now, the leading indicators, preparing the ground is one thing, and looking at the success at the end of it is another thing. The bit in the middle, I can't control. I don't think in an organization this size we can yet begin to address that. So what we're doing is we're focusing at the start and the end. Are we preparing it? Are we enabling? Are we empowering people to be innovative? And what's the results? The bit in the middle, we're going to go with good faith and live into our employee leadership principles. For example, leaving things better than we found them. Keep supporting those values across the team, and the hope. Expectation is that good things will happen as people be more innovative, recognize they are, challenge the status quo, feel empowered, enabled, and tooled up in processes and software tools to have innovation activities within their departments. And then hopefully the right things will happen. But what are those right things and how do we know? Basically, the outcome what we're aiming for is that the cost of innovation is warranted. That's hard to measure, but if innovation has an impact, we should be looking at the dollar value or the other business indicators. Are we selling more products? Are we improving our percentage of the market for auto insurance and home insurance and RV insurance, motorcycle, that whole broad range? Identity insurance, roadside services, telematics, device insurance, the range is huge, but we know if we are having an impact, if those sales are at least supported, if not growing, avoiding decay of the sale is a success as well. Increasing the sale is good. What's our net promoter score? What's our customer loyalty index, what are the expense combined and loss ratios of insurance. That's essentially how we know we're having an impact on the company. We've been through the journey of saying, yeah, we're having great innovation, great ideas. Let's get the product out there, but we can't measure, because it's just hundreds and hundreds of things contributing towards that new product sales. We don't know if innovation alone will help, but it can't hurt. If we're stopping the bad ideas from getting too far, and only the good ideas that deserve the investment are progressing and being incorporated into our products, then this is where we believe currently we should be looking for those indicators that the cost of innovation is warranted overall. So that's a really simplistic view. Maybe in a year's time, we'll start measuring the cost of innovation versus the number of product increments or major feature releases or major feature additions as we get more mature. But we're not there yet. So what we want to do is make sure that ideas fail as fast as possible. Celebrate those failures, celebrate the learnings from those failures, celebrate the fact that we even had something to fail, and celebrate the successes along the way as well. Make sure that we're innovating on the right problems. That matrix of important versus urgent. You want to be focusing on the non-urgent and important problems. Continuous improvement is all about the urgent and important issues. And that's, to be honest, where a lot of effort is spent, not just in Allstate, but in many organizations. We need to fix this problem and we need to fix it very quickly. We want to be focusing more on the left-hand side of the timeline where things aren't as urgent, but are important and will have an impact. So that's where we're going to start focusing our energy, making people, put one eye over there when they're looking at their job, keep thinking left as to what could be done that would make a difference, as opposed to what could be done to solve this problem. So that's a very brief recap of my journey. I hope that was interesting. I hope it was useful, and I'd love to hear your feedback or questions.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Column. It was definitely interesting. I'll make a couple of observations, if I don't mind, before we kind of open up to questions, and then we'll get Eoin in for his bit too. I know that when I talk to people about measurement, they say, well, what KPIs can I use? Is there a standard set? And it was interesting that you didn't show us a standard set of KPIs, because I don't think there is one. In my view, it's a question I want to ask people as well, is, there isn't a starter set or a starter for 10 that you can give to somebody and say, that's how you should measure innovation, because it's not appropriate to every organization. Is that a fair comment, Colin, do you think? Or
I would say yes. And another reason that we don't have a standard set is because Allstate is such a huge organization. It's actually a conglomerate of businesses, and then each business, there's multiple organizations, and they're all different. So I can't have a standard set that applies across the board, which is why I've taken that prepare the ground and check the outcome perspective. If we're checking the impact of the ideas, we're doing well. So I use a kind of a 3I type model. Let's inspire people. Let's help them innovate so they can have an impact. And that's the I3 model, which I use to kind of drive conversation, because I can't prescribe how it should be done, but I can certainly inspire them to think about it differently, look at that non-urgent, important area, help them innovate using tools, but help them focus on the outcome, not the output, not the work products, not the documents, not the meetings, not the fact, if you're measuring innovation by how many meetings have you had, I don't care. I'm more interested in what's the impact. Have you made a difference to the bottom line of the company? And much as we might not like it, it all comes down to cost or sales or revenue or net promoter score, which is another influencer of cost. So it has to come down to.
They're nodding at you from as far away as Hong Kong.
Yeah, and that focus on the non-urgent I think is critical as well, because urgent always takes over. And if you don't focus on the non-urgent, then you're going to hit a problem. Brian, you've your hand up there for.
Yeah, you kind of half answered the question there, Charlie. It was really, Column, that was very interesting. Thank you very much. It was more or less based on why exactly is the focus moving more towards the non-urgent and important, because I sometimes find that if you do focus on the important ones and obviously urgent, they're the ones you're going to get the most buy-in, and there is things obviously like design sprints and things like that. So without spending a significant amount of time, you can actually get to a stage where, well, at least we can make a decision. I was just trying to, I think Charlie's half answered it to a certain extent, but I'm just wondering, why that sort of focus? Because to me, I think there needs to be an element in every sort of box to a certain extent, and it's not necessarily, I suppose, putting all your eggs in the one basket. It was just a general comment. I was just.
Yeah. So the urgent and important quadrant for me is like the burning bridge. You're on the bridge and it's on fire. You got to put the fire out because otherwise the bridge will fall. If it's made of wood or some combustible material, right? So there's a real motivation to get involved in it, and it's easier to get engagement, without a doubt. But before that bridge existed, somebody was standing at the other side of a valley thinking, we really should have a bridge. That wasn't urgent, but it was kind of important. And that bridge, presumably then, was highly valuable and provided many easier journeys than before it was available. So that's kind of the analogy I use as to why we want to be focusing on the non-urgent. You want to be building these constructs which are going to be valuable into the future, not just fire treatment or preventing falling apart.
So it's that repeatable process piece to a certain extent and building that capability. Okay. Thank you.
Good stuff. Thank you for that. David Thomas has a point, so we'll go to that and then go to Eoin. Give Eoin his sort of few minutes, and then we'll go back to an open discussion if that's okay. So David.
Good to take the button off mute. So thank you very much. It's Column, is it?
Yes.
A fascinating journey into insurance. I've previously worked with Philips and Hewlett-Packard, driving change and innovation in these companies. And you talked about the challenge you face. What is an innovation? What's incremental versus radical, etc. I want to draw to the issue of, as Christensen put it, Clayton Christensen, the innovator's dilemma. So one of your real challenges is getting enough funding, getting enough attention, getting enough focus, and it has to be a strategic choice. Coming back to that point about standing on the burning bridge, saying we better do something about it. That's a failure of strategy at that point, unless it's a black swan thing. But it's a failure of strategy. We should have been making sure the bridge didn't catch on fire in the first place. And I think that's where a lot of the challenge comes with a lot of large companies. So they're so focused on making sure that the sales bonus comes in, that the structure remains the same, that sort of thing, that they've missed the point of longer term change.
I'm really sorry, David. You broke up just as you were making your big point at the end there.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I wonder, particularly from the example of Allstate, what's your observation around that challenge of driving innovation versus managing today's sales? That challenge of the innovator's dilemma.
I guess I'm in a really privileged position. I work in an organization whose job it is to find those non-urgent applications of technology. We're a technology innovation research and development team. That's kind of what we do. And we're not the only organization or part of the organization. There's different innovation teams on our non-technology side, within claims, for example. An insurance company, in many respects, it's just a big claims handling organization with product sales and services tacked onto the side of it. Something that enables us to live into the promise of protecting you against life's perils. So claims innovation is a big thing. We're technology innovation. And then we have another group called product services innovation and delivery. So the short answer to your question is our CEO has taken a very simple and effective approach. He has established teams whose job it is to look at that strategy, to look at the emerging innovation or emerging technologies that could be innovative. And our challenge is to explore how they could be used and how they may bring value to Allstate Group.
A fantastic position to be in to have that opportunity to do that. So thank you for that. Thanks, David. Thanks for coming back, Colm. Eoin, we'll give you control of the screen for a couple of minutes there.
I can do. I have one question I'd like to ask, unless you wanted me to dive straight in.
Whatever you think will work best.
Column, what one thing would you tell your 6-year younger self about measuring innovation?
About measuring innovation, that's a really difficult one. I think I'm tempted to say, don't overanalyze it. Just do something and be agile about it. It's like you can get caught up in trying to be too focused and too precise on what exactly you're creating, whereas the best move is often just do something, learn from it, pivot, and do something else. That's probably a good guide for life in general, as well as measuring innovation.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Colin.
Yeah, great point.
That's good. The link with doing slides is I had this chat with Says, who's an ex-CTO of NASA. He said, pick 2 or 3 measures, never mind perfect, just pick 2 or 3, start using them, start learning from them. You'll get there. Validated learning cycles, your first measurement set will be replaced by another one in a year or 2. Keep going, have no fear. That was his main message. Okay, so I will attempt to share screen. I presume I have a capability to do that now. And
we have permission. I don't know if you have capability.
Well, I'll say nothing about that. So first of all, Column, thank you very much. Brilliant. Thanks for sharing, informing, and that's a great 6-year story, 6 years of learning to report the pain and the gain. So someone else has started sharing, by the way.
So just give it another go there.
Yeah, do. Okay, so can you all see the slides now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thanks, Colin. That was great. The 6 years of learning and the pain and the gain. And I really liked the reference to preparing the ground and that link with the leading and lagging indicators. So all I'm doing is very quickly, I'm going to reinforce that from the ISO perspective, because it's one of the areas that our network has an opportunity to play a significant role. And don't be worried, there are a few slides here, but I won't spend long with them. We don't want to dive in. This stuff will go on the LinkedIn group as a post. And by the way, there is already a post on the whole family of ISO standards from our November meetup, so anybody can access that. Quite a lot of information there, which I hope you might find useful. Okay, so what are we doing? Well, we're trying to give you some news on what's happening with ISO, particularly today in relation to measurement, evaluation, analysis of innovation, and insights from the horse's mouths, because some of the people in this group are involved in writing the standards, and this network has an opportunity to contribute on an ongoing basis to the standards. It's a nice position to be in, learn ahead of the crowd, stay ahead of the crowd. First standard worth noting is that the main one, 56002, the big system standard, that's out. It's been out a year and it's having a growing impact. And it is a big picture, long haul, prepare the ground standard. That's what the whole thing is about. It's designed to show you, here are the things that you should be considering doing, and you should do them right if you're interested in long-term success from innovating repeatedly, not just once. So it's good, it's out there. But what does it say about measuring innovation? Well, there's clause 9. Now, that doesn't mean anything, but who hasn't read it, and I'm not recommending it to you unless you're going to sleep shortly. But highlighted in green on the slide, it provides a really good framework for measuring for an organization at different levels. So you declare the obvious, and then you go and check and see if it's real, and you learn while you're doing it. That goes to John Say's comment and Column's answer to my question. You got to look at the inputs, the throughputs, the outputs. The standard doesn't talk about outcomes much, and it doesn't talk about impacts much in measurement terms. So that might be a significant weakness, but I'll come back to that in a minute. But it is really good in showing that you need to look at it from the organization and from the system point of view and the portfolio, all of the initiatives that you might have going today and tomorrow, and individual initiatives. Doesn't say much about individual ideas either, but I'll come back to that. It is strong on analysis evaluation, providing some kind of audit capability, internal they're talking about there, and management review. And those three pieces at the end can seem like they're nothing to do with innovation, but it's really about establishing the good habits that will get you there in the long term. So ISO 56002, it's out. It is useful. It is not inspirational. It is framework. Back to that thing at the top of the slide. If you're going to climb Everest, well, you need someone to guide you there, someone with knowledge and experience, but you also need a plan, and 56002 provides exactly that. Moving things swiftly along, 56008 is new. It doesn't exist as a finished standard now. It exists as a project. So the project team is working on this, and we should see it around 2023. And this is all about measurement and only measurement of innovation operation, as you do, as you go, within an idea, within a project, within an initiative, within a strategy. So it does a lot of the things that the 56002 standard doesn't, or at least it should do in 2023 when it comes out. It will give us an overview of how to measure, how to evaluate, how to analyze. We can already see that it's going to be a distillation of what's agreed as the global good practice. It does not go to the very horizons and new techniques. It's about what's agreed to be best practice. It absolutely will provide good, detailed, practical advice on when to consider measurement, what criteria will make the difference between useful and not useful measurement, and it will look at the full cycle, inputs, throughputs, outputs, outcomes and impacts. And then it'll be really helpful on the distinction between impacts, outcomes, and outputs. There's a real question as to whether it can provide a toolkit. That might be worth a chat today or another day. And that's part of the limitations of ISO standards in general. But I think it will provide a really useful framework for our profession when we're dealing with our clients and when we're dealing with the organizations that we work for to demystify and professionalize measuring innovation. Okay, quick point of news, 56001, the work has started. The Irish Mirror Group meets this afternoon to consider its positions on this, and we expect to see that standard in about 4 years, maybe 3, so 2024, 2025. Done. News delivered. I hope it's useful to have the odd little bit of information about the standards. Insights, the question is, what are they worth to us? What do we need to know about them? So that will pick up as we go along, and we will, of course, keep you in the know in our meetups and by posting on LinkedIn. And if you've got other thoughts on how we can deal with that specialized session or whatever works, just let us know.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Eoin. Okay, I know we've a couple of minutes left officially, but I mean, the shed is scheduled to run till 2. So any questions on the standards? Any more on the measurement? Any points or questions, observations? Shane.
Charlie.
Stop sharing, Eoin, so I can.
So yeah, I just wanted to share a couple of thoughts in response to what Column was saying about measurement, and I guess this has been sitting in my head since I knew this is what we were going to talk about. I guess the thing sort of lurking behind the various strategies is the question of an acceptable form of measurement versus an effective form of measurement. And I guess ultimately a useful form of measurement would probably be presumed to be both of those things. But that I think in practice they're often in conflict. So like in a very simple sense, if you can point directly to the bottom line, most times that's going to be an acceptable form of measurement, but often you can't, or at least you can't in the short term. And doing it becomes counterproductive, therefore not effective. So I guess the thought I have is that as often with things to do with innovation, the answer is to do the opposite. of what seems to be the thing that makes sense. So, for example, I've often heard it suggested that, you know, what you should really measure is the waste, not the success. You know, like, don't count the amount of ideas you had, but how many you threw away, for example. And perhaps another thing, and this just occurred to me as I was listening to the presentation there, was I think we often focusing on in innovation on measuring the things we've started, but what about the things we've stopped? Because if you don't stop anything, there isn't any room. You know, if all the seats at the table are full. And also, I guess that the thing with measuring what you stopped is that it then sort of says, am I subjecting what I'm currently doing to the same standard that I'm subjecting the new thing that I'm proposing to? And I think most of the time we don't. It's just a sort of like, well, it's what we do, so it works, so it's fine. We don't have to challenge that. The only thing we have to challenge is the new contender. Anyway, sorry, those are my somewhat rambling thoughts.
No, it's good points. And if you don't mind,
so
I'll reshape one of those as a question back to
yes,
Columb,
because
I was going to ask.
That's what I didn't manage to do, was formulate your question.
Yeah, because I was wondering, as you went through about, I mean, you review and you kill the zombies with the expression you use. You know, how often does that review process take place? And are there any particular criteria that you use for saying that one needs to be killed off?
How often? It should be a regular review, but really it depends upon what part of the organization. You know, we don't have an enterprise standard. We talked about having an enterprise standard, enterprise processes for innovation, and we shied away from it because the impact of implementing that would have had so much negative side effects, unintended consequences. We thought it wouldn't be worth the effort. So if we set out the broad curbstones around, you know, here's what you can do to help keep you on the right path. Yeah, keep focusing, kill those ideas off as early as possible. Encourage people to contribute. Let everyone know that everyone can innovate. It's not just the vocal people in your teams. It's not just creative artistic types. It's everybody. Empower them to be innovative. Empower them to share. Make them feel safe and secure. And celebrate when we do kill things off, because we have to stop doing things which, you know, take up the resources that would be best put elsewhere. So celebrate that we've done that. But to your question, how often do we do it? It has to be almost constant.
Right. Okay, that's a fair comment. Thank you for that. Got one more point, one more hand up, which is Catherine. So I think we're probably time to cover Catherine's point, and then we'll probably need to wrap up. So Catherine.
Thanks, Charlie, and thanks, Colin, for your time. I was just wondering how you use measurement to reward and recognise innovation insofar as to drive that culture. I know you kind of said it's everybody's open to it, but we all know the reality is that there's people who will generate innovation capital quicker or sooner than others. It's just the way they think. Is there a form of recognition or reward, or is it a democratic or socialist process?
Firstly, I don't think we have this just right, okay? But I'll tell you what we do. Patents which are awarded, when they're awarded, there's a monetary reward and a publication and showcase event on an annual and quarterly basis. We have on a yearly basis, we have 2 events which kind of promote that innovation culture, where we celebrate the successes across the organization, even if it's to say, this is what we did, this is what we learned, this is what we stopped, or this is what went on ahead. We also have Innovation of the Quarter challenges, which is 2 forms. One is to, here's a challenge, crowdsource this across the organization and celebrate that. And there's a fanfare and there's media communications and newsletters and videos and stuff going on about that. And then there's the celebration of what you did. You know, is there anything notable that came from your team that should be shared, that you should be rewarded for? And there's, you know, meetings and recognition events with high profile leaders in the organization to support that. So we do some things. Have we got it right? I don't know yet, but we're trying.
Thanks.
Okay. Good stuff, thank you. And yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think a communication plan around innovation is really important to make sure that you are communicating with everybody at an appropriate time and at an appropriate level.
There's one that we do very briefly is that what we have identified as a team of innovation champions from different parts of the organization, and those champions become the evangelists and the proxies that help that flow of information back and forth about where the challenges in terms of the process and tools are, where people's emotions are, and help communicate successes, failures, and other learnings. So, and then they share that with each other as well as up and down, so that all parts of the organization can benefit. So those champions, it's an essential part of our solution.
Yeah, thank you. David, quick point before we wrap up.
Yeah, very quick. Great presentation. I just to say, my brother actually works for Allstate, and I just texted him while you were speaking to ask him what he thought. And I should say, my brother lives with a disability, and he was saying he hasn't stopped sending me messages on WhatsApp about how fantastic Allstate is. But one of his key points, and it gets this thing about measurements, and sometimes, you know, some of the measurements that are perhaps missing, that living with a disability and working for a company that's innovative like Allstate makes it much easier for him to make a contribution and feel a sense of belonging with the company. So well done on that, and maybe those type of numbers should be looked at too.
Right. Well, I would not claim any credit for that. That's part of the culture of the organization, and I'm sure he's a big part of that culture.
Excellent point. Thank you. Thanks for raising that, David. Okay, so thank you, Colm, very much for taking the time to share your thoughts. I really enjoyed it. Learned some stuff, which is always good, and it's good to get your insights as ever. Thank you, Eoin, for the quick update on the standards as well. Thanks to everybody for some great questions and some useful discussion as always. I noticed a couple of people came in very, very late into the call. We are recording this one, so we'll make it available and share the link through LinkedIn again. Our next formal meetup like this is going to be on the 26th of February. Monica's going to talk about idea validation and have some discussion around that. And then on the 12th of March, we've got a speaker from outside the group, Ian Wright from the Disruptive Innovation Network, and he's going to look at learning from failure. That session will run on a bit longer. It'll probably be about a 90-minute session, so make a note of that in your diaries for the 12th. I'll set up LinkedIn events for those over the next few days. And then I suppose finally, the next 2 Fridays, we've got nothing planned, but as discussed, we're planning to just open up the call for a general chat for anybody that's around. There's no formal topic, so if people want to pick up the discussion on measurement, anything else that we've covered already, then do. Or if you want to share how you got into this innovation gig in the first place, that would be really interesting to hear from a few of you. And I'll probably put those in LinkedIn events as well, but it'll be the same link every week for those. And if we start getting flooded with invites from LinkedIn, then let me know and we'll look at something slightly different. But so we've got about 7 minutes to 2. So unless there's any other points, just want to say thanks very much, everyone.
Charlie, can I bring up a point? The reason I was late The reason I was late joining is that when I tried to join at 1:10 I was left sitting waiting to join. That's the prompt I was given. I'm not saying that I actually hit it, but I was going to ask, is it possible to include a dial-in number as well if possible?
Yes, yeah, because it generates one, and definitely, yeah. Sorry, I'll do that for you for the future ones. Your name didn't pop up, so it was maybe before you got to that point, but a phone in would have helped definitely. Yeah, so yeah, I'll include that.
Cheers.
Thanks. Yeah, good point, John. So, okay, any other closing comments?
Just well done, everybody. Good session, Column. Thank you very much. Well done, everybody.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, thanks everyone.
Yeah, thanks, guys.